Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L coming in to talk about My Hero Academia, chapter 256. Now, this thing officially comes out in like 4 days, if I'm looking at my calendar right, like on Sunday. So it's still quite a bit out, but there's a lot of people talking about the chapter. The chapter's kind of already leaked. So we're going to talk about it here. We're going to be super careful about it, especially after last week where I was not being careful. But yeah, the format for this video is going to be, first I want to address the comments from last week because a lot of you helped out. Thank God for you guys. Then we're going to talk about just some general stuff with maybe timing and where Hero Academia is going and what kind of stuff we have to accomplish. Then, and that'll also like wrap up the general thoughts for the chapter, which I don't really have much of. And then we will go into the chapter page by page kind of talk through. And then we will follow up on Shigaraki has one for all, because there's a few more pages that when they come into play get a little bit interesting. And I'm very excited to share those ones with you. And I really want to know, for you theory crafters out there, stick to the end of the video because that's where that bit will be. And I've got like at least 3 pages, at least 2 pages to show you to try and show you what I'm thinking. But that's the name of the game. I want to show you what I'm thinking. So first off, let's just go back to last week. Last week, I was confused. I was utterly confused. I still think that the last couple pages of that chapter were a little bit like just quick, fast-paced kind of thing. Very confusing. You guys pointed out that it was a code. When they said rescue requested at Wagakumo Hospital, whatever the name was, that was code. And you know what? I didn't catch that. I wasn't going to catch that. I wasn't going to be able to catch that without a second opinion. So thank you all for being my second opinion. That said, my overall opinions about the chapter or those final pages, like some have changed. For instance, my opinion on Hawks, but my opinion on the hospital keyword itself, Kurogiri giving out that word, that hasn't really changed as far as I'm concerned, at least from my most likely flawed understanding of the hospital system. I don't feel the impact there. That said, I do want to put in there that most likely that the clue wasn't supposed to be that big. The reason that you would say that is because if the author gave the characters a big clue, then they would be acting on it right now. Given how these characters acted on All for One when he had his thing, like the hideout raid. Given that, the author couldn't give the characters a big clue because it would have ruined the setup. Like, the author giving away the hospital keyword is enough to make the situation worthwhile, but also not enough to be able to clinch the mystery together. So that's why I think the hospital keyword isn't that important from a narrative perspective. But to go further into my perspective on like the whole thing with the hospital is just that Kurogiri telling them hospital is about as useful as them knowing that Kurogiri was Shirakumo. And the reason I say that is because once they knew it was Shirakumo, they had maybe 3 different avenues that they could have gone and checked. 1, the rescue workers that came to the site when Shirakumo died. Which ambulance did they... In what car did they transport Shirakumo in? I assume that they transported him in an ambulance, but again, I don't know the medical system. But let's just assume they transported him in an ambulance, then he went to a hospital, then he went to a morgue or a funeral home, right? I remember someone mentioned in the comments that the hospital would have reduced the area they would have to search from funeral homes and all that. But then, even in that case, just knowing that Shirakumo was there, they could have tracked back which ambulance he rode in. Because I assume they keep that, knowing like the world of bureaucracy, they probably keep that information. They would have checked which hospital he was housed in the morgue. And then they would have checked which... I don't know how they do cremation. And again, you guys can kind of tell this is all based on my flawed assumption. And I don't know what the process is. But that was my general thought process just from those 3 things. They would have had records of where he would have been stored before the cremation. They would have had records of what car he rode in to be transported. And with those 3 points, Tsukachi, the detective, the same way that they went about finding out where the bar was for the villains, that same level of effort, he could have put that same level of effort to also narrow down which facilities might have been compromised. So that's why the hospital keyword didn't feel all that valuable, because again, the moment that you have a corpse on your hands, that narrows it down incredible amounts. At least one place would have been narrowed down by name. And that, like, definitely the place that cremated him. I don't, like I said, I don't know. But that's why that keyword didn't feel that valuable, because really nothing changed other than the confirmation that, okay, a hospital was definitely involved, but chances are a hospital was already involved. That said, the next point that I had was that the doctor was operating in a hospital, and that came out of a flawed interpretation. But the moment that Kurogiri says hospital, it accidentally justifies, well, kinda, it accidentally supports the thinking, because if Kurogiri said hospital, there's no way this guy has memory for the time period that he was officially dead. There's no way there's any memory for that. He would have had memory from the moment that he was resuscitated. That means that at the moment that he was resuscitated, he was in fact in a hospital. The reason that's important is because that says that the doctor was working out of a hospital at some point in the past. Like he was doing human revival surgery in a hospital. So that's kind of odd to think about. Now, to that one, you may say, well, maybe Kurogiri was just in a place that looked like a hospital. I mean, like comparing across labs, like, what changes? It's still the white, sterile place. But if you go down that particular line of thought, I think that what you're going to end up seeing is that the hospital keyword was even more worthless than it initially was if you're going down that line of thought. Because now you've moved it from it's a hospital to it's a place that looks like a hospital. What are they going to do with that information? So most likely, if we're talking about keeping that like compact, it would be legitimately that the doctor was working out of a hospital when he revived Kurogiri, which is an interesting situation. Like, I really want to know how that particular line came out. I sincerely doubt that imprint is from when the boy was actually dead, and if it was, I don't think that's like the best move there, because that's pretty shaky ground unless they bring in a paranormal aspect on the Quirk. Okay, my god, that was a lot. That was a big preamble for the chapter, but I hope you guys enjoyed that talk, because there's more things to go into just thinking there. Overall, though, I do want to make it clear, thank you everyone for pointing out where my mistakes were, because I do need that every now and again. We all know I get tunnel vision. Anyway, the next thing I want to talk about is what this chapter ultimately does. When people are reading this chapter, maybe you came out feeling like, man, we're kind of like setting up for the end here. And I also saw that when I did a Google search for this, some of the videos on YouTube are talking about the end of My Hero Academia. And it's just, in terms of the end of My Hero Academia, because this chapter kinda is setting up for stuff, like people talk about, there's an All Might death flag in there at the end of the chapter. Because that's going on, I want to point out that we still have quite a lot to do in the My Hero Academia storyline, and I'll point them out for you in terms of what I think are the big points. First off, Izuku's power development. Izuku still has like 6 other quirks to find. Look at how much time it took for Izuku to get Black Whip under control to where he is right now. Looking at the amount of chapters that took, and then assuming that one of those new quirks is going to come in a pair, so maybe he'll figure out 2 quirks at the same time. Considering that, just do the math. That's how many chapters we would still have to do to get all that material. Not only that, the author has obscured 2 of the people in the All for One dream. So that means the author is hiding their identities. That means their identities are going to have a little bit more oomph behind them. So we still have to cover those 2 mysterious people in the One for All dream. Okay, so we got that. Then we have the Bakugo, Hawks, Tokoyami, Best Jeanist plotline. The authors pointed it out. He's building up the emphasis. He's built it up with Hawks. Hawks knows Bakugo's relation to Best Jeanist, and Bakugo wants to go tell Best Jeanist his hero name. That's another plot point. We still have to cover that. Then we have the Kirishima, Meena, and weird call. Anyway, we have the Kirishima, Meena, and Crimson Riot storyline. That storyline still needs its resolution from Kirishima to Meena, because Kirishima is still in his kind of like growth rate, and this chapter kind of touches on it. He's still in a little bit of a growth arc. But we still need that resolved Crimson Riot's status in the Hero Academia universe isn't resolved yet. We need to know that. We also need to know about Gigantomachia. We need to get that one sorted out. We also need to get the resolution for Momo and Kendo. You might be asking why them, but no, the author put specific effort. The last time that we visited the Momo-Kendo relationship, Kendo didn't feel that she actually got a victory off of Momo. There is still a lot of growth that has to occur for Kendo and Momo in that particular situation. Actually, not for Momo, because she's just kind of used... In Kendo, it's all Kendo, but we still need a resolution for that. We still need a resolution for the Eri Mirio plot. Specifically, this chapter did it. The chapter reminded you that Eri is having her problems with her horns. Remember how the author does this stuff, right? The author is the kind of person who will foreshadow things ahead of time when he wants you to remember, so that when they come up later, it feels natural. He did this with the Liberation Army. He set that up from Gentle and from the Endeavor and Hawks arc. He was setting that up. Similarly, what he did with Aizawa and Shirakumo, he set that up from the end of the Class 1A versus Class 1B war. Similarly, the thing with Fuyumi. He set up Fuyumi a few chapters before we actually had confirmed that we were going into the Fuyumi stuff. The author sets things up ahead of time. Anything that he puts a little bit of effort to and looks kind of weird when you're reading it in a manga, it probably means because he's setting it up for a future chapter. This is what happened with Eri. We are getting an Eri resolution somewhere. And Mirio's probably going to be tied to that because Mirio is tied to Eri narratively right now. But we have that. We of course also have the Todoroki Endeavor stuff, but that stuff is so critical that it could come in even in the middle of a giant invasion. And then we have the Stain set up in Tartarus. Stain's gonna get his second hurrah. It's going to happen. The author thinks he's a dark hero. The guy was shown in Tartarus when they were bringing in All for One. He's going to act at that point in time. We still need a plot that's going to involve him somehow. So a lot of these plot lines could come together and happen simultaneously, but the point is that this isn't a situation where the series is being rushed. Because the series isn't being rushed, it probably means that the author is going to be able to develop this thing out in a lot of chapters. So I'm looking at this, and this is still a lot of material, but like at least up to chapter 400. If I was gonna be like really optimistic, I would expect chapter 400. Now, like the biggest turnaround there would be if the author comes out and ends this like at chapter 300, in which case it's like, oh my god. But like, that's not realistic. There's no way you're gonna fit 6 Quirk awakenings in that time, right? Like, it's just, that's not realistic. But hey, it's all dependent. That's what I wanted. That's one big thing that I wanted people just to keep in mind, is that we do have a lot, and the author is setting up a lot that he wants resolved, and we still haven't gotten those big points resolved. Like, especially like the next big one is going to be the whole Hawk situation with Best Jeanist. Tokoyami's setting up Hawks as this great man. That's how Tokoyami sees him, and we still haven't even begun to see how that whole storyline is going to unravel, especially now that Bakugo is being interwoven into it, given how Hawks is looking at Bakugo. So at that point, those are my overall thoughts when it comes to like the feeling of finality here. Let's go into, because this is going to be a long video because we're already halfway through here, 15 minutes. We're going to go into the chapter proper. The chapter gave us a quick rundown of what the characters did well, during their internships. Now, I will say, one of the unfortunate things here is that when you see chapters like this, it should confirm to you that the only people that really matter are the characters presented in an arc, so like the arc stars, and then the main trio of Izuku, Todoroki, and Bakugo. And then, well, with this recent bit, Aizawa is also one of the important characters. That's the reality of what the series actually is that it is one that props up the popular characters more often than not. Because when you're having a quick run through of this, it's pretty much saying that the author didn't want to give time to showing what the other kids were doing, or that the other kids weren't interesting enough for the author to come up with ideas for it. This is a problem that we've been having since back with Shizaki, when it became really apparent. But this is just one of those chapters that reminds you, the ones that matter are pretty much Izuku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Aizawa. And interestingly enough, those are also some of the guys who are up in the popularity polls. Mind you, there's other popular characters that didn't get like the limelight, but you know, for those characters, it's a matter of the author giving them an opportunity to be the star of a particular arc. Oh, speaking of that, the Shoji storyline and the Izuku father storyline, those two storylines are confirmed to be happening, and we have yet to get them as well. So another two storylines there. Oh, and the traitor storyline. How could I forget the traitor storyline? Obviously. Anyway, back to this. Going into it, we're gonna look at the first page. So the first page is just showing off Aoyama has a new power. He has a naval saber. Now let me tell you, I find that idea so interesting that there is a sustained emanation of a laser that is not going forward. I like the idea that he's specifically holding a projection of light at a certain degree away from him, and it's not emanating forward. It's like hard light at that point. I like it. I don't want to get into the physics of it, but I like it. I think it's really cool. The next one is one that's really close to my heart for page 2. It's the one that shows off what Toru was doing. And the reason that this one is really close to my heart is because I've had a lot of conversations with another fan, Skelly. I don't know if Skelly watches these videos, but talking about whether or not Toru is a mutation or a emanator quirk, because of how things sometimes work. Skelly brings up good points, and so far I've been losing that argument. But this chapter, I think, is going to give me the edge. Now, the big thing here is that we're seeing Toru bend the light. And here the issue is, like, is she bending the light through psychic power, or is she bending the light through her body? The first half of the page makes it kind of hard to actually tell. But when you look at little things, it looks like light is bending in the empty space between her hands. And then the interesting thing that the author did is that he showed this little panel where you got to see how the background was warped. First off, I think that was really creative on the author's part to use the tones on the background to show how the power itself is distorting the light. But here's the thing. If Toru is emanating that little sphere of influence outside of her body, so in other words, in this empty space between her hands, that's not a mutation anymore. That's not a mutation-based power. What is creating the bending of the light? What is creating the bending field around her hand? That's an emanation. That's an emitter. So here, this is going to be really good for the last little bit. We have to remember that quirks are getting more complex. The standard type of emitter, mutant, and transformation most likely is going to get blurred as time goes on. That's just what's going to happen. If we're talking and saying that quirks are getting more complex, eventually the quirks won't be able to fit under proper classifications. It's like going to be like the whole situation with the platypus. The platypus has a lot of behaviors that aren't considered mammalian, but it's going to be a mammal under. It's an exception in terms of what a mammal is. But that's pretty much what we're going to be encountering with quirks that don't fit neatly beneath the criteria that we've seen before. Anyway, I really love that part, and I'm going to bring that up to Skelly. I'm going to take him to task and see what he thinks about it. But then we go in for Meena. And Meena comes in with a pretty interesting page where she shows us that she has a full body viscosity, which I think is really cool. And also, just to continue this up, like, you know, Meena produces acid, right? But at the same time, Meena has a mutation quirk. Her quirk is that her skin is resistant to acid. So again, we're seeing this other case of this complication in the classifications. The main quirk is the one that's being called the emitter, the acid emission. But when you see the fact that she is able to live inside of her acid like that, it's pretty much telling you, well, she has anti-corrosive skin. The way you would take that to task is like pretty much asking, well, what happens if you just put acid that she didn't produce onto her skin? Is she more resistant to it? Maybe, because acid, across acids, there's, if you're able to negate one acid, you're probably able to negate a bunch more. But yeah, that's another thing where the quirk classification system doesn't properly describe the capabilities that Meena has. Interestingly, Aoyama is in the same panel as Meena when she's showing off her little form there. And, Aoyama is the poster boy for a guy that has an incompatible quirk, and we see him bending over. If Meena didn't have the anti-acid skin, she would have been in the same situation as Aoyama. That is someone whose body is incompatible with the quirk. The next page, I think it starts like the nice little quirk for the chapter, that being that they talk to us about which heroes they were interning with, and they also tell us like the rankings. For everyone in the top 10, we already know the rankings, but it was still cool. I really liked that little bit of trivia. I do hope this is one of those things that the anime will expand upon. Like, please, anime, like, please just give us more. The movies are willing to give the lower characters more time. So I really hope that the anime follows what the movie is saying and we get to have more time with these characters and we get to see what they were doing, because I would love to just world build with all these new heroes that are popping up. You look back at other anime like One Piece and Naruto that had endless filler, and it's like, come on, if I know you studios want to do filler, so please just do some filler, like make it cool. The Fairy Tail anime has amazing filler. Why is it that the Fairy Tail anime can have amazing filler and we can't get amazing filler? That kind of stuff, you know. I'd be totally okay with it. You know, OVAs actually, you know, we do get that 1 or 2 filler episodes per season, and the OVAs are pretty nice too. But I want more. And this is just a wonderful opportunity to get more. Like, hopefully they'll do it, but you know, fingers crossed. Anyway, the valuable parts here are to know that they interned with number 9, Yoroi Musha. And then they tell us what they had learned, pretty much battle methods, and they develop new combos and new moves. So that's pretty cool. Pretty much these guys, when I'm looking at it, they seem really impressive. They seem like they got more combat potential. And then we have the really cute thing of Meena saying that she adapted her Acid Man from Unbreakable. So the idea of using your full body in something, I think that is neat. I would have a lot of questions. I would love to know how Meena can shape the acid itself. Like, think about that. That's kind of like water bending in a way. Like, she even made it have little eyes. She shaped the acid. She's able to maintain and hold her acid around her. I want to see how that's animated. That's really interesting. That is a new little like step up for her. That's pretty cool. I like what the author did there, but I am kind of curious about the mechanisms, because now if you're talking that she's making an acid man that she can like stay in, that's acid manipulation, like formation of acid or the molding of acid. That's different than just producing it. Very interesting, author. Very interesting. Anyway, that was all good, and of course the Kirishima Meena moment. I love it. I think that was very cute. That was so neat. Anyway, All Might just sets up that he's our narrator, and we go into Ojiro and Sato. Unfortunately, these guys don't get a great moment. We find out that they were with Lion, the hero, in number 13. We know that they were training on strengthening, exertion, and foresight. So pretty much these guys have simple quirks. We just have to make them more combat capable, kind of thing, which is unfortunate. Some people here did not get the best upgrades, but what can you do? I think that the author's kind of stretching his creativity with a few quirks, and then some other quirks just, it doesn't seem like he can put a lot into it. Then we have Jiro and Shoji. They continue their association in terms of reconnaissance. Very interesting that they put them with Gang Orca. I think that's a good move given what Gang Orca can do. So that's really cool to know that those two went together. Then you have Kaminari and Sero and Mineta, and they went with Mount Lady Team Lurkers, which is number 23. Anyway, the interesting thing here is that Kaminari was put with these two. We know that Kaminari is associated with Mineta through antics, but Sero and Mineta are actually the ones who are associated through experience, because Sero and Mineta were the ones that were paired together to do the midnight challenge for the exam. So it was interesting to see this little shakeup with where Kaminari went, and it's interesting to see that they're putting together teamwork for those three, because that's kind of changing Kaminari. Kaminari's kind of floated all over the place. He went with Jiro and Momo for their first thing in that first villain arc. Then he was with Kirishima and Bakugo. I thought that would be his stable team, because he's more associated with Bakugo than he is Izuku. But now it's interesting to see that he was just plopped together with the Mineta group. Then you go down, we find out Ida was with Manuel, and that's just Ida continuing goodwill and mindset. Then we had Koda going off with the washing hero, Wash. Interestingly, they talk about smooth communication, where Wash is the one that's just saying Wash all the time. So that's pretty interesting. Then we have Tokoyami. We know what he was doing, but we know that he improved overall strength, so that's good. Kirishima was with Fat Gum, and interesting to know Fat Gum's number 58. I'm not sure if we had that information before, but I appreciate it now. Interestingly, how quickly you make them lose their will to fight is what we got for that description. Not sure what to make of that, other than it just sounds like Kirishima got harder and is more unbreakable than he was before. Oh, it's also getting darker here. Let's wrap this up. We have Uraka and Asui. They went to decision making, and that's what they got from Dragon Hero Ryukyu. Although I will say that, you know, technically Ochako got more upgrades. It's just she didn't get them during the Ryukyu bit. But okay, decision making. Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm a little bit sad because I think clearly Suyu has the potential to increase her capabilities because the author is giving her more capabilities. And Ochako, it's hard for Ochako. In all honesty, it's hard because like her limits are internal limits, and we don't really get a good sense of that. There's a big difference between Kirishima's plate breaking or Izuku breaking its arms and Ochako being able to hold back nausea, right? Like that doesn't stick in your mind as well. So I feel a little bit bad here. Because Ochako's usually the one, well, as you saw in the chapter gave Ochako more upgrades, but Ochako's usually the one that she's bringing outside things into her quirk. You know, she brought in her gunhead fighting style. She brought in the whip for this chapter. It's unfortunate that what she got was decision making. In that, you know, like that's not something that we can really easily get excited about. We move on. Momo was with the magic hero Majestic. That's interesting. She got prediction and efficiency. That might be a really good thing for Momo there, prediction. And finally, we have Bakugo, Midoriya, and Todoroki. Them getting, well, we know what they got. They're just explaining it. And after that, we go into what people saw as the big setup for All Might and Izuku, where All Might is looking up to Izuku's back and saying that Izuku doesn't need to look back at All Might anymore. He doesn't need that support. We know, like when it comes to manga, there's a lot of rhetorics about backs. One Piece had a rhetoric about a back when it came to Whitebeard. That is a back that was never exposed to danger. Air Gear had a rhetoric about backs where it was like the weak will always see a strong's back because they are behind the strong man as the strong is leading forward. You know, so that one is the kind of rhetoric I'm seeing here. Like Izuku is leading the way and people follow behind Izuku. That's the type of rhetoric. Although, you know, that's just like the metaphor of it. Izuku will obviously always look back at All Might because he needs to make sure that All Might's okay. It's just that All Might is no longer the one directing his future and pointing him at where to go. Izuku stepping into the future himself. So when you look at that panel and you see like that actual thing of Izuku's foot stretched out as if he's walking, you have to, that's the rhetoric that the author wanted to show there. Anyway, we get to see Izuku using Black Whip in combo with his striking attack, which is just a really good thing to see here. And he looks really happy, so that's really neat. Anyway, the next page is just a nice little bit of all the characters talking together. If you love character interaction, of course you'll love those little bits where like Kirishima's teasing Bakugo about conquering the winter. We have Mineta punching Izuku in the stomach, and we have Izuku going up to talk to Ochako. Not pronounced that right. Anyway, going to talk to Ochako. That was really cute altogether. And it's just, this chapter was really adorable with how Izuku was kind of dumbfounded. I really love that one panel of him just thinking that he ran out without thinking. That was really adorable. Then you go into the Ochako rhetoric about how she turned it into a new strength and they improved each other. And this was just, you know, just echoing what I mentioned before, in that Ochako is the type of character that sees things and incorporates it into her stuff. So this is actually, I think, a really good use of the Ochako revolving around Izuku type of development. You have to remember, like for early Hero Academia, Ochako was revolving around Izuku. This is proven. You shouldn't be saying that she wasn't revolving around Izuku when you have quite literally the girl saying that she wants to be like Izuku. That wasn't like the most efficient way to develop the character. But this stuff, like her taking the strengths of something that she saw, she didn't even see Izuku using it properly all that often. He only used it a few times. This was really good. This is really good on her. This is like the best iteration of Ochako. Like this is the best parts of Ochako. It's the Ochako that goes out and learns gunhead martial arts. It's the Ochako that goes out and incorporates a whip into her stuff because she saw how useful it was. This is like good Ochako right here, and it's really good to see this aspect of the character again. And of course, it is adorable when they fist bump. Come on, man, that was cute. I really like what the author did with all that. That was just overall very cute. Now we're gonna skip ahead and we go to the big talk with Aizawa and present Mike. Now, when I'm seeing this page of them talking about how the commission knows something and how they're talking about when they find out who's making the Nomus, all that should tell you is that the author is setting these two up specifically for an interaction with the Nomu manufacturing plot. So that's really interesting. That's really interesting because these two, the way that you can see it, they're outsiders in the situation and they know it. They're talking about how there's this exclusion between them and the commission. They know it. So very interesting that the author is putting them through this. Very interesting that the author is setting them up this way. This smells like a setup. They are probably gonna be involved when it comes time to raid the hospital, because we don't know. But when it comes time to raid the hospital, these guys are going to be involved. These guys are going to be in there. They're gonna get in there somehow, which is interesting because if those guys are going to get involved, you have to ask, how do these students get involved? How exactly is this going to work? That's an interesting thought, especially because, like, you know, President Michael's one of those people that people thought was the traitor. You know, there's some possibilities here. We'll have to see. If President Mike and Aizawa end up raiding that thing by themselves, that's like, there's potential for some mishaps going on in there. But right now, we're too open. We don't know. There's many solutions that the author could take here, I think. I can't see what answer the author wants to lead us to. Anyway, at this point, the author reminds us that we're having a little bit of a trouble with with Eri. I always forget her name. Her name always escapes me. But yeah, we're having a little bit of trouble with Eri. So it was cute to see that she's in a little like play area. And it's good to see that, well, Aizawa was able to deal with it. So this, when I saw it, it really sounds to me like this is the author reminding us that Eri's horn is a problem. And it also seems like Eri's horn has accumulated enough power to start being effective again. Remember, like when Eri used it up last time, it got really small. So right now the horn has accumulated. So the girl's prime. She's pretty much a bomb ready to go off. And at that point, I did see other people saying that maybe Aizawa's gonna take Eri to the hospital, and then that's how the doctor's gonna find out about her, and then the doctor's gonna want to go take her. That's a potential. I don't think Aizawa, with where he is right now, with the way that this is working, with the way that he is distrustful of hospitals, and the fact that they have Recovery Girl, and the fact that in the very page he says this is UA High School. When I read that, I don't think that he's going to involve Eri with outside forces. In fact, he sets up UA High School as the one safe place. That's interesting, because that does set up that Eri's probably going to be relegated to UA High School. Regardless, I think this was good on the author to remind us of the big three, and to also remind us that of the ticking time bomb that is Eri. And then we go to the nap room where we kind of end off the chapter, where we have All Might saying that he's impressed that Bakugo has gone up so much. He's glad that Izuku has mastered Black Whip. And then we go into moving to the next step, and All Might presents the note with the generations of successors. So that's going to be really cool. Right there, I think we're going to find out about at least maybe 4 other quirks. At least 4 others. And that's going to be really exciting. I'm so into it. I want to see. I want to know what's in there. If we find out about 4 out of the 6 other quirks, that's going to be great. That's going to be absolutely great. Nana's quirk should be one of the ones that we find out about without problem. If it's disintegration, then holy crap. Because then that puts Izuku on the same kind of level as Shigaraki. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what Nana's was in particular. I'm very excited for that. People also pointed out that at this point, like, All Might could die, and now he has, like, Izuku has something to remember All Might for. And I agree. Like, All Might is cleared to die, and I still think All Might probably is going to die. Although because the Night Eye rhetoric exists, All Might's probably gonna die in such a way that All Might makes the choice. Like, All Might's not gonna die in battle with a terrible villain. I think it's much more likely that All Might's gonna die protecting someone when he didn't have to. But that's a video for another time. Anyway, really dark here. Let me turn on the light, because we need to go to. Because we need to do the final little bit. Thank you all for waiting so long. It's 38 minutes into the video, but I want to talk more about the possibility of Shigaraki having One for All. I went back digging through the chapters after I realized something in the shower, and I'm just thinking, oh crap. there is reason for the Doctor to covet One for All. There is reason for the Doctor to like that Shigaraki would have One for All. Here's the reason. One for All might be able to beat the Quirk Singularity. So let me take you back to chapter 246 first. Chapter 246, it gives us a fact. The hardware isn't evolving fast enough to keep up with the software's rapid development. This will ultimately lead to quirks that cannot be controlled. I name this concept the Quirk Singularity Point. The Quirk Singularity Point. Okay, so that's a fact. That's what the Quirk Singularity Point is. It's this point where quirks cannot be controlled. Okay, here's another fact. One for All is beyond the Quirk Singularity Point. Let me take you back to chapter 193. Here we have our good old One for All, like the predecessor, saying, we've long since passed the point of singularity, but don't worry, you are not alone. And then he also, and how interesting is it that in that same panel, right before it, he said, it seems that you can only manage about 20% right now. Isn't that interesting? How he's talking about control and then specifically referring to something that we as readers understand as a point of no control. And then think about the One for All rhetoric, how Izuku thinks of One for All like a bunch of locked doors. Locks themselves symbolize control. He is controlling the flow. So right here, you have this point where we're talking about the singularity. The guy confirmed that One for All is beyond the point of singularity. We have the Doctor saying that the point of singularity refers to this point of no control. And then you have this guy saying, don't worry, we got you. And also saying you can only manage 20% of the point of no control. That's really interesting. Izuku's whole character arc is about controlling One for All. We're not even at 100% yet for the kid. But yet, look at what's happening with the rhetorics. So here's the thing. Here's my inference from reading those few little pages. One for All is able to influence the point of singularity, or it's able to exert its will on the point of singularity. So this adds more reason as to why they would want One for All, because they also pointed out that after the 4th generation, that's when quirks were starting to get uncontrollable. But then you have the situation with Izuku, who has 7 quirks, not counting One for All, or however the math works out. He is, like they said, like he is beyond the point of singularity, but yet he is able to control it. That's the big thing. I think that what One for All offers is locked in that fact that Izuku's not alone. Maybe because he has the vestiges, or maybe because he has the security system that One for All affords. Maybe that's why Izuku can control his quirk despite the Quirk Singularity Point. Here's another thought. The Quirk Singularity Point, the Doctor described it. The problem with it is that the hardware isn't evolving as fast as the software. But when you have One for All, think about what happened with the lock metaphor. One for All is allowing the hardware to grow as fast as the software. Because One for All can be limited, it gives Izuku time to learn to how to manage it, instead of just being a newborn gifted all this power. Right there, One for All is the perfect antithesis to the concept of the Quirk Singularity Point by everything that we have seen from One for All. So, looking at those few pages, my conclusion is that One for All is inherently valuable when it comes to solving the problems that come with the Quirk Singularity. And that's possibly why Shigaraki would be a valuable test subject if he does have One for All. I feel like, when you consider that a little bit, it becomes a little bit more likely, because there's still, if I was to describe it like math, it feels like we have it feels like we have 2 equations and 4 variables. And that pretty much means it's unsolvable. We can't solve those equations we can't solve 4 variables with 2 equations. That's just not how it works. Or it's very hard to. So that's how I feel with this situation. It does give me a little bit more confidence when you consider what's going on with the Singularity Point rhetoric. But I need more evidence. I need more evidence. Like I said, I feel like there are still some missing points here. But those are my thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching. We're going to call it there. Let me know if I made any mistakes. But Just remember, because this is a fan translation, there might be a few points that are a little bit messy, and so we should wait till till the 6th to get the next chapter. Anyway, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day, and thanks for sticking with me for an over 40-minute video. Big ones, man.